This show has been an unexpected W. Not only do we rarely see Battle Junkie anime, when we do, I don't think they're as, at the very least, entertaining as what Kelvin in this story has set out to be so far. It's not often the whole reason why you avoid the end goal in any isekai fantasy hero story is because the dude just wants to go adventuring elsewhere, and the natural reason he'll bump into that end goal and the other heroes isn't because of some noble thing, but more so, eventually there's gonna come a point where the only thing worth fighting will be the end goal boss that the heroes are trying to deal with, and then eventually he'll probably have to fight God because that won't be enough either. I really have enjoyed this show, and now that we're close to halfway through its first season, it's hard not to just have a grin on my face as I anticipate the next episode, and having the future Demon King, or potentially the future Demon King, join your party with a kind of plot twist that wasn't necessarily meant to blow your mind, but more so kind of sucker punch you in a way that you just kind of believe what this demon was saying last week. Oh, I feed on things, I take their power, the deeper connection I have, I get more powerful. It's pretty easy to look at someone who looks like that, has a girl seemingly chained up, and very much has some demonic aura about her and say, that seems believable, because, I mean, who the hell's gonna second guess everything that talks? Especially not Kelvin, because if you say you're evil, well, I'm gonna go kill you because you're evil. And then to see the actual truth and that kind of emotional backstory of how this is really her father figure who protected her all these years and just was trying to make sure anyone other than the hero could find her and kind of set her free, sort of a thing. In a way, he almost felt like a battle junkie himself, which is why he wanted Kelvin to give it his all, because you know, sometimes sitting around in a tomb basically waiting for the right person to save her, you know, ultimately, he's, by the looks of all those skulls, he's been fighting people off for a long time, and I don't think many people put up a fight, given the fact that he was still standing, and obviously we saw where the end of the episode went. But I have to say, the party in the way they're going about presenting the summons slash just the adventurers that will be a part of his party, it's quite interesting because I totally thought as they were setting up the like, oh, this dude's not actually straight up evil in the way that you're expecting. That's clearly going to be a new summon for him. And he even offers in this episode, sure, he does say like it probably wouldn't work to begin with. He's arguing the main reason he doesn't want it is because he would only serve a demon king, which is obviously, it's pretty noble for his own mentality. He wouldn't betray who should be his master. But I honestly think had he accepted, there's probably a good chance that he could have healed him. Obviously, we'll never know given the fact that he is dead now, but I like the fact that they weren't afraid to say just because this character had a more emotional connection to this new party member, Sarah, doesn't mean that we can't kill him off or show us that there will still be sacrifices. And that's what makes it pretty damn fascinating to me, is that despite having a character who is kind of like a psychopath on the battlefield, this dude's smiling, he's giddy as a schoolgirl when he sees something that could kill him. Off the battlefield, he's a pretty nice guy. You can just see the whole idea of how he goes about presenting himself to Sarah and just the fact that he keeps his promise to protect her. He's a generally nice dude, all things considered. It's just like any gamer who plays on the hardest difficulties, this is now the most intense video game for him, and he ain't gonna let up on, no way. He basically has isekai hero powers. He's gonna build a party, he's gonna go kick some ass and take some names. Hell, I'm convinced if it comes to the point that there's no one stronger than him, he'll find a way to clone himself, and he'll just fight himself because that will be the most entertaining thing for him. And they even have fun with his battle junkie persona. Not only do the enemies call it out, literally his party members are like, you just like fighting a little? Are you an idiot or are you just that clueless? Absolutely hilarious. Now, I know the fight will probably bring up some more questions about the 3D, because there was a mixture of 2D and 3D. I'd say like the first 6 minutes of this episode was just typically 2D animation with the way they incorporated 3D, whether it was Jared or even this creature. You know, they did a very good job with blending in the smoke and not being able to see it as clear as maybe as bright as the last 3D fight scene when we went up against our armored boy. Obviously, around the halfway point, they get into more into what, you know, people say, like, kind of PS2 cutscenes, you know, video game cutscene. But I have to say, even though, if in a perfect world, I would keep it all 2D, I can't say I hate looking at anything about this fight. There's only a couple small, minor moments that just the transitioning looked a little weird. And the worst character in 3D is hands down Kelvin, and he's barely on screen when they do that. I think the way they incorporate the 3D, it just feels like a JRPG cutscene. There's no different than, you know, watching any real video game cutscene, whether it's Xenoblade, whether it's, Final Fantasy half the time in some of the older games, right? Even though it's not as good as some of the more crisp detail of that 2D animation, the way they do use it, it makes sense. Whether it's Kelvin unleashing this magic attack that does like an area effect, it's not just like he casts a fireball, he'll bring up walls, he'll crush the ground, and the way Jared will come in and use his shield. I find that rather than it just being a 3D for the sake of it, more so, I can see why they used it in so many things. You can look at where they use 2D animation for some of those close-up shots, whether it's our girl, her bow and arrow, or it's just two characters very close on screen, so you can detail it a lot better. But then when you start pulling away and you have all these different characters and magic attacks and physical attacks, it makes sense that they go 3D, but the fact that it does feel polished. It may not look as highly detailed as some of the 2D fight parts within this episode or even prior episodes, but it never looks atrocious to me. Now, obviously, it's personal opinion. Some people might disagree with that, but I think anyone who's writing it off as like just simply the worst CG, on a technical level, I think they do what they need to, and the only times I feel myself a little disconnected is when I focus on the humanoid characters that are in the 3D models. And even then, it's not bad. It's just, it's easier to be pulled away from it, I find, because you're like, okay, yeah, clearly I'm looking at 3D and it's a bit of a juxtaposition from what we just saw in the 2D moments. But when I'm focusing on a demon, or I'm focusing on an armored knight, right, I find that they do their job in making it feel like it's not clunky, it's not slow, it's not jittery, it's pretty solid animation, all things considered. But the reason I really enjoy it being incorporated into these kind of high-octane fights is the fact that the magic and the way they break apart the world, it just feels like it works in that 3D environment. So I'm kind of glad to see that when we compare the previous fight that incorporated this type of animation, which was obviously Kelvin versus Jared, compared to what we just saw here, it already feels like a step above what they did before, which to me is a good sign of things to come. As usually it's the earlier portions, if you are using 3D, that will look better than the later portions that are using 3D. But truthfully, it feels like the 3D actually got better in this fight compared to what we had a couple episodes back. So, I mean, I'm not really complaining. There's a couple of things I would change if I could in a perfect world, but it doesn't change the fact that when I thought the battle was over and they transitioned and I was like, okay, we're kind of getting to that 3D moment, it kept my interest and excited to see what's going to happen. Because rather than just having your generic party of a bunch of people, or a bunch of elves, or a bunch of dwarves, whatever it is, you have a monster knight who just evolved, you have a slime who can become an abomination, you have an elf with a bow that kicks some ass, and now you have a potential demon lord on top of having a battle junkie summoner. This party is wild, and it's absolutely fun to follow. The fact that we're already rank A is pretty insane, because seriously, this man's about to create a whole new ranking system by the time he surpasses rank S. It is funny because, I mean, when you do look at the heroes of this world that we got teased, I think it was in last episode, they look like, well, shit, are they weak? Because they're pretty much only slightly higher level than where Kelvin is. But it's really just because our perception of what strength is in this world is so warped, similar to how the goddess is kind of warped by thinking Kelvin is the metric of where everyone should be. The dude's just exploiting systems, going to every battle, not really valuing his own life the same way a normal person would, being tasked at destroying the Demon King or anything like that. So it's kind of funny to see what should be perfectly normal, competent heroes basically be perceived as super weak and useless just because our dude's such a battle junkie that he gets thrown in the most dangerous situations, and basically he's kind of the guy who would go bungee jumping without a bungee cord because he says, ah shit, I'll probably make the fall into the water. The dude's a riot and I love following him. I think the new party member, based on the personality we got, the taste of her backstory with also her kind of childlike attitude exploring the world, is going to be very fun to follow. But thoughts down below, what do you think of the episode? Are you loving it as much as me, or do you have a different opinion? Do let me know. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.